I wonder if the native people that lived here had kind of a anti-vandalism ethic. You know, there's too many of us around here. We can't all be drawn on the rocks.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like rocks.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring. Over the years, it has been really fun to interact with parks people for many different reasons. But I think one reason, especially for me, is because it has become abundantly clear that parks people have their very own subculture.
What do you mean by parks people? Just people who love to go to the parks?
I feel like it's not just like people that like
people who base their whole lives over going to the parks.
I feel like parks people are people that somehow have national parks as part of their identity.
Yeah. No, I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
That's me, for sure. But also all the people that are like, I made my own passport stamp book because the one that you buy isn't good enough and I needed more space. Those type of people.
Yes, exactly. And, I feel like sometimes I don't think we realize that we're part of this parks subculture because we're usually the weird people. There's not many people around us like us. And
it makes it hard to make friends. I'm not going to lie.
Well, it's like, think about it. Parks people, we're the ones that in college or in high school, we're the ones that have a backpack with hip straps. Or we're the people that buy socks one pair at a time.
Right.
Or one of my recent favorites, we're the ones that see backpacking as a way to rotate our food storage. Nobody else does this kind of stuff. It's so funny because we're a subculture, but we don't often get together, but I think sometimes, especially I'm finding more recently as we started the podcast and everything like that, the Dirt in My Shoes and the Exploring the National Parks podcast common areas are like the common spaces that we share with a lot of these parks people. And so it's kind of fun because we're all people that we don't really know each other, but it's like we all went to the same high school. The way we talk about different parks is like how we would talk about science teachers or something like that during high school. And it's just kind of fun. The reason I bring it up is because we recently released an episode on Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And on the YouTube channel, someone left a comment that said that was their home park. And I feel like that's something.
That's totally a parks people thing, isn't it? What's your home park?
Yeah, exactly. But there are so many people that live near national parks that don't have a home park.
Yeah.
I remember one time we were visiting some of your friends that live up in Seattle.
They've never been to Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
You can literally see Mount Rainier from their house, and they have never been there. I know. And I was just so ashamed of that friendship. Just kidding. I love these people, but it was just like, wait, you haven't been to Mount Rainier? We literally just drove 18 hours to come to this national park. And you live 1 hour away and you haven't been there?
Yeah.
What is your problem?
I know. It was so out there for us, but we're the weird ones most of the time.
It's true.
But having a home park, I think is so parks people.
Yeah.
And it's just really fun. In Utah, we have 5 parks, that you could choose for your home park.
You know what's funny, though? I wouldn't even choose a Utah park for my home park.
Yeah, I know.
You know which one I'd choose.
Oh, yeah.
We specifically moved to northern Utah to be closer to Grand Teton and Yellowstone.
I know.
Grand Teton is my home park.
Yeah.
I'd say Yellowstone is yours. They're about the same distance from our house.
I know. Well,
so,
I was thinking about the idea of a home park, and I was thinking home parks, it's more like Harry Potter, you know, where it's like you have your houses. Someone introduces themselves. My wife is a Gryffindor. I'm actually a Yellowstone, and my wife is a Grand Teton, you know?
But I have people who leave messages for me, and they're like always saying like, and I approve of your choice of favorite national park. You know, it's just like, well, I'm glad that you approve because it is the best national park. So I just feel like it's a no-brainer for me. But funny that you bring up home park because Mesa Verde was a home park to the Native Americans who lived there.
Ooh. But nice segue. That was a really good segue.
But in all truth, today we're talking about Mesa Verde National Park. And this park is very different than pretty much any of the national parks that we've talked about because we haven't talked about the parks that are protected because of like cultural reasons and people. That doesn't happen all that often. I mean, it does more with like the monuments and the battlefields and historical sites and stuff like that. But for national parks, it's pretty rare for something to become a national park when it's based around culture and people.
Yeah, no, this is super special. And, you know, when you mentioned that it's a home park, it actually is a home park to 26 different Native American tribes. The love and the affinity that you feel for Grand Teton or me for Yellowstone or this nice lady on YouTube that commented hers with Cuyahoga Valley, you know, when you enter your home park, it's really special to you. And it has, and you want to really protect it. You just love it. But then when you go into Mesa Verde, it is special because it's kind of precious in, and all the Lord of the Rings fans just went like, precious, my precious. All the Lord of the Rings fans love that word, but it is precious within the national park system itself because it is protecting a home heritage for so many Native peoples, especially, you know, these 26 tribes. If I was a Native American, I would see it regardless of the tribe that you come from. This is like, I don't know how you would put it, but it's like, this is American architecture at its best, original American architecture at its best. And it's such a cool thing. And so when you visit this home park, you almost need to treat it different because it's like you're visiting somebody's home that is actually their home. And so you don't want to put your feet up. You don't want to leave your mark or take anything or anything like this. You almost want to treat this park with a little bit more reverence than you do other places.
And I would venture to say, if you've been here, you know what I'm talking about, but it feels different in this park. Exactly what you've been saying. But there's just something about standing there and hearing the stories of the people who lived in this area for a long, long time. And there is such a reverence and sacredness and respect that goes into being here as a visitor. You feel like a visitor, but you feel like you're a part of something really special while you're here. Even if, I mean, it's not my heritage per se. I have no Native American blood in my bones. You know, I don't have any of that. But it just, like you said, represents such an amazing part of our history as Americans.
Yeah.
So, okay, I grew up with a mom who loves all things Native Americans, like everything. And she goes insane with this. And so as I was thinking about talking about this park, I was thinking about all the experiences that I have had in this park over the years, because I remember visiting this park since I was a young girl. It's just somewhere that, like, my mom is like, let's go to Mesa Verde. I love Mesa Verde. We got to go to Mesa Verde. And so I actually have spent a lot of time here throughout the years. And I'm really excited to take a tour through it or explore it together today with all of you.
This will be so much fun.
So let's jump in. Should we just follow the park road?
Let's just follow the park road.
Follow the park road. I want to mention, so when we go to Mesa Verde, a lot of people don't realize that because it is a pretty small national park, you've got like the visitor center, the main one. It's called the Research Center, and that's down right by the park entrance.
And pretty close to Cortez.
Yeah, and so a lot of people stay in Cortez. Some people stay in Durango, which we'll get to. I want to talk about those towns, but let's jump into the park. But so you go in through the park entrance. You've got the research center right there. You drive for a minute. You've got the campground. There's one campground in the park.
Wow, that was the biggest, underestimation ever. You drive for a minute?
No, to the campground you drive for a minute.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But then you drive forever to get up to the top of the mesa.
Yes.
And so when you're planning your trip to this park, yes, it's okay to stay in Cortez. I've done that plenty of times. It's 10 miles outside of the park entrance. But the thing you have to remember is just going through the park entrance gets you nowhere close to what you want to see.
Yes.
You have to drive for a long time. And so going forward, as we've planned our return trips to Mesa Verde and stuff, we almost always stay in the Farview Lodge when we come because it gets you so much closer to the main stuff that you want to see.
It's true. They call it Mesa Verde because green mesa. It's basically this
green table.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to drive up and the road is so windy and it takes forever to get anywhere because you can't go very fast and the road goes in and out and does all this crazy stuff and it takes a long time to get there. It's actually kind of frustrating sometimes.
Well, and so this is a park where you have to make reservations to go on ranger-led tours to see the best stuff. And so if you don't realize that, hey, it's actually, going to take you an hour and a half to drive from Cortez to Cliff Palace at the end of the road, a lot of people make that mistake and they don't leave early enough and they miss their tour times because it's it's not that big of a park. It's not that big of a deal, but it is.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. So we've kind of, like I said, you can stay in Cortez, but we have shifted to just staying at the Farview Lodge in the park because at that point you're 15, 20 minutes out from the main stuff versus an hour and a half.
Right. And if you look at the map, it's actually kind of funny when you think of it this way, but you look at the map and the entrance that you just mentioned, the entrance near Cortez is literally the top of the park and everything you want to see is at the very bottom of the map.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to traverse the entire park in order to get the things that you want to see, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there. If you haven't planned your trip yet, keep that in mind. And as you mentioned, pretty much everything you want to see is at the ends of the roads. So there's a couple different roads that go through this park. You've got the one that takes you on the Chapin Mesa, which takes you to the main stuff. And then you've got the Wetherill Mesa Road, which is much smaller and more windy. You can't take a big car on there. It's
right.
And that takes you to a couple things, again, at the very end of the road. So
everything is at the end of the road.
Yeah. So it's just funny, looking at this and talking about this. It's well, really, it's not much of a stop-by-stop journey. It's enter the park, drive forever, and then everything is right in one spot.
Yes, it's true.
So looking at the map, let's go down the Chapin Mesa Road because that's the main stuff that you're going to want to see. And we're going to sit there for a minute and kind of talk you through everything.
Sweet.
And John and I decided today that our fun facts episode for Mesa Verde is going to go way more into what you're seeing and the cultural part of it.
Yes.
All of that. This episode is a little bit more nitty gritty trip planning stuff because there are certain things you have to do to be able to see this park really well. This
isn't just a show up park. Because
no, it's really not.
It's so much you have to plan ahead for. The reservations for different things, and it can be a little bit tricky. And so we just want to make sure that we spend the right amount of time making sure that people know what they need to know before they go.
Okay, so once you pass the Farview area, which is where the lodge is, you'll drive for a minute. There's the Farview sites, which a lot of stuff at Mesa Verde actually is on top of the mesa. I think that was actually a huge surprise for me once I realized what I was looking at. It's well, actually, they spent way more time on the mesa top than they did down in those cliffs in their houses.
It's kind of crazy because we spend so much time at this park celebrating, and for good reason, all of the cliff dwellings. The cliff dwellings are incredible, and those ones are super well preserved, which is probably why we celebrate it so much, because they're still there. And we've talked about this in several other national parks where you drive through it and you see the fallacy of a people-less national park. That's the fallacy. You know, we think of this place, especially driving across the top, you see this beautiful southern Colorado landscape. It's really pretty, but it's not the way that it would have been because there were so many people living on top of this mesa. And there are so many. We were listening to a park ranger not too long ago, and he actually talked about how many archaeological sites they've identified, but they just leave alone because a lot of them are very similar. There's just tons of these mounds that are all over the landscape that are these places where people lived, but you just can't see them because they haven't excavated them all because they don't need to, because they know what's in most of them and they want to preserve them. And so we see what we see now, but the entire top of this mesa was peopled with tens of thousands of Native Americans.
Yeah. So that's kind of what the far view sites are. That's one of those sites where you're looking at stuff on top of the mesa. And you'll see a lot of that as we go through. But so keep driving south and then you'll get to a point. So there's basically 3 different loops down at the end of this road. And the first one takes you to like the archaeological museum, the spruce tree house, which is a very well preserved cliff dwelling. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they're saying that the rocks above it are really unstable. And so they had to close that down to tours.
Right.
And in fact, so this is one that I remember from when I was a little girl. Is when I went with my family when I was younger, we actually were able to go through it. I don't even think it was a ranger tour. I think it was just self-guided.
Wow, that's crazy.
And they had the kivas there. So those big round structures that are down in the ground that was like, they're very sacred.
Right.
But so the kivas there had their roofs on them reconstructed.
Wow.
And we could climb down the ladder into the kiva.
Nice.
That's like one of my core memories about Mesa Verde actually was at the spruce tree house climbing down into the kivas.
That's so cool. You don't get to do that anymore.
You don't. Although I saw on the website today when I was looking that they are working on a solution to kind of, I don't know, make those rocks a little bit more stable so that they might be able to open it in the future.
Interesting.
But as of right now, you can't tour it or anything. You can see it. You can see it really well, actually, from right up there. So it's definitely worth a stop. And then I would say the other thing that's right here is the petroglyph trail.
Yeah, which is probably one of my favorite, like, nature-y hiking trails.
There's not a lot of, like, really, like, must-do hiking trails here. You really are there to see the cliff dwellings.
Right.
But the Petroglyph Point Trail is really cool. I was surprised that Mesa Verde doesn't have more petroglyphs.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's quite a trek to get out to the petroglyphs along this trail.
Yeah, I wonder if the native people that lived here had kind of a anti-vandalism ethic. You know, there's too many of us around here. We can't all be drawing on the rocks.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise to me, like how long it actually took to get out to the petroglyphs. This is one that the last time we hiked this trail, we actually hiked it like in the evening after dinner.
Oh, so pretty.
It was gorgeous. Like everything was bathed in the golden glow of golden hour. It was so quiet. We didn't see anyone else out there, which got a little bit eerie towards the end. We were like, how much further do we have?
One of the things that was really creepy is because we were like the only people out there. It was starting to get dark. And then as we finished the trail, we come off this trail and like there were tons of vultures all around where we were.
The whole trees like surrounding us were full of vultures.
It was like they knew something we didn't.
It did feel after foreboding.
After dark, this place is ours, you know. Like anybody left on the trail when the sun goes down.
I definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
It did feel a little bit eerie, but it was pretty cool to be out there without anyone around.
Yes. It was pretty cool.
It was a little bit haunting. I think when you're at a place, though, that's like ruins and, you know, buildings that have long since been forgotten or left. Because, you know, at Mesa Verde, there are the main ruins that, you know, everybody wants to tour and see and stuff. But there are tons that like are just there that they don't even point out to you because they don't want people really trying to get to them or know they're there or whatever. But there are so many dwellings.
Right.
Like it's just like there is kind of a more eerie feel being
especially as it
them.
Gets darker.
Yeah.
Yeah, this place really, it kind of empties out as it gets darker anyways. And so it kind of helps with that eerie feel. It gets darker. You see all the empty cliff dwellings and then all the vultures. So
yeah. But if you're looking for a nice trail, the Petroglyph Point Trail is probably my favorite hiking trail, like actual hiking trail. And that's like 2.5 miles. It's not too bad elevation wise or anything like that. It's really fun to be out there and the beauty of it and see some petroglyphs along the way. We also saw some other like starts of walls or remaining walls, I should say, from cliff dwellings as well. So
it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is a nice trail. So continuing on along the road, you know what? Let's go straight and let's do the Mesa Top Loop.
Okay. Yes. I like the Mesa Top Loop.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it is what it says. It keeps you on the Mesa Top and you're exploring the history of the people who lived on the Mesa Top. And that's really what it's focusing on. It's not as much the cliff dwellings as it is, here's what happened actually on top of the mesa for hundreds of years.
Yes. And so it's exactly like what we were talking about a few minutes ago. We were talking about all the different people that lived up here. And there's actually a lot of dwellings. There's lots of things for you to see. And they've excavated a few so you can kind of see what they would look like and things like that. And so you can see quite a bit of what their day-to-day life would have looked like.
Yeah. So what you'll find up here is pit houses, which was kind of the beginning of when the ancestral Puebloans moved into this area. They started with the pit houses, which was basically like, it was half underground and then it had like a thatched roof type structure on top of it.
Right.
And so it was a little bit into the ground and then this roof on top. And that's what they lived in for a while. So you'll see that. You will see there's one really cool cliff dwelling, the Square Tower House, that you'll see along this loop. So that's definitely worth a stop. But then you're seeing these pit houses and these villages, and then you get to the Sun Temple.
Yes.
Which is really cool. And this is kind of what they moved into past the pit houses. They moved into actually just making stone structures on top.
Yes, this one is so cool.
Yeah, so that's a really good example of kind of what they moved into.
Yeah, and as their civilization kind of grew and progressed and got a little bit more technologically advanced, that's when you get things like the Sun Temple. The Sun Temple is my favorite example of Mesa Top architecture in the park.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's super cool. And you can kind of peek in through a lot of the different windows. You can walk all the way around it. It's really big and it's so beautiful. I absolutely love it.
So from Sun Temple, also you can see Cliff Palace really well. Kind of in that area, you'll see a couple overlooks for Cliff Palace, which is the main dwelling that everybody wants to see while they're in Mesa Verde. So that's cool too. But I just think the Mesa Top Loop is really cool because you're learning about primarily how the ancestral Puebloans lived while they were here. I find it really interesting that the cliff dwellings, actually, they think they were only inhabited for like 100 years or less than.
It's true.
And so they really weren't down in the cliff dwellings for the majority of the time. I mean, they're saying the ancestral Puebloans were probably here for about 700 years. And if only 100 years of that is in the cliff dwellings, then I think it's definitely worth the time driving this loop and learning about what they actually lived like for the majority of the time they were here.
Exactly. Because the history of it is they believe that they moved into the cliff dwellings to get closer to the water sources as like maybe the climate changed. And so as things dried out on top, they needed to move into these wetter places. That's why they moved into these cliff dwellings and built them in a way so that they could quickly access what they needed.
Yeah.
And so it's just different. But yeah, very short period of time compared to the entire breadth of the time that they lived there.
Yeah, so that's a really good example of that. I highly recommend driving that loop. A lot of these loops are one way, so you just go in and out and you see some things, stop as you want to for anything that looks interesting to you. But then as you leave the Mesa Top Loop, you'll kind of head north for a minute, and then you can take a right-hand turn to the Cliff Palace Loop, which, let's be honest, this is the best part of the park. Absolutely.
This is why you're here.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that the reason you're here is to see Cliff Palace.
What's funny is, well, and we can talk about this in a minute, but Cliff Palace is not my favorite cliff dwelling to tour.
No.
But it is the largest cliff dwelling in North America. It has like 150 rooms. It's that very picturesque and beautiful cliff dwelling that you'll see on all the pictures and all the postcards and everything. That is Cliff Palace.
Right.
And so that's what you'll hit at the beginning of this loop. You'll get to a big parking lot. You can get out here and you can walk down to an overlook that shows you Cliff Palace really well. But in order to get closer, you do have to take a ranger-led tour. Now, this ranger-led tour, like I mentioned, this ranger-led tour for me is the most boring of the ones that you can take.
And you notice that when you have two toddlers that you're holding, trying to listen and enjoy the ranger tour.
And it's not the information that they're giving, because the information they're giving is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not very interactive. So you're walking and you're just like, you don't get to go up really near the dwelling that much. You're kind of staying right next to it and looking at things. And it's a big group. They take large groups through here. And so it just feels a little less personal. It's a lot of standing around and listening, which, like John mentioned, is very difficult if you have younger kids, because they're bored out of their minds and you're just trying to keep them quiet.
Right.
While you're all standing there.
Yes.
In this one spot, you know, and not moving around and not really doing anything.
Right. The experience that Ash shared about her visiting Spruce Treehouse when she was a kid and being able to go in and out and explore kind of on and around the cliff dwelling is not the experience you should expect at Cliff Palace.
No, don't expect to do anything cool. I'm just kidding. There's some cool ladders at the end that you have to climb up to get out.
Yeah.
And that
to get out.
Yeah.
I love that at the end of your tour, you can climb a cool ladder to leave.
Yeah. Well, you're going up the cliff to get back to the top. And it's like, that's for kids especially, that's kind of the most interesting part of it.
Yes.
So I'm being totally honest here. I'm speaking my truth. The Cliff Palace tour is not my favorite. Do you need to take it? Yeah, probably. I wouldn't skip it.
No.
Because it's really cool to be down there right next to it. Learn a lot. But just go in knowing that this one is not an interactive one. This is the least, like, here, come explore and get closer to the cliff dwelling type of tour that you can do in Mesa Verde.
Yes. And like you said, it's probably the Cliff Palace itself is probably, I don't know how large it is or how wide it is, but I'm just kind of imagine, if you will, like 70 yards from one side to the other. And you literally just like, you walk 10 yards, you stop for 10 minutes and listen. You walk 10 yards, you stop 5 minutes and listen, you know, over and over again. So it can be rough for kids or people with short attention spans. But also, we've gone back a few different times and we've actually had tours from the same park ranger.
I know. And they were like, what, like 5 years apart?
Yeah.
And this last time when we went, because we just went last summer, we go there all the time, but we just went there last summer and the park ranger was the same as the time before. And we're like, oh my gosh, hey, like as if he knows who we are.
Yeah, it's like, hi, you know, yeah, it's exactly right. He probably sees so many faces.
I know, we're like, hey, we know you.
Good to see you again.
Yeah,
he's just like, hey, you.
Like,
But the reason I bring that up is because this tour is probably the most interesting and in-depth presentation of the ancestral Puebloan culture and you get so much good information, and you can really connect to the place on this tour.
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
And the park rangers here are top notch.
Yeah.
Like, I've never taken a tour here where I was just like, wow, that park ranger really didn't care about what they were talking about. It's like they go above and beyond. And just like how we had the same tour guide, 5 years apart on the same Cliff Palace tour. And it's like, man, he's still here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine the amount, like just the wealth of knowledge that he has regarding this site and these dwellings and these people, because he's been here for so long?
Oh my gosh. No, it's incredible. And asking them questions is really interesting, because they'll give you their presentation and then they'll kind of let you walk around a little bit, but you can still ask them questions. And I took the opportunity this last time to ask a few questions, and it was just really cool because I could tell that he was really just, skimming the top of what he was trying to say, because he doesn't have time, to answer to all the depth of his knowledge and to answer questions for every individual on the tour. It's just like, oh, these people have such a strong connection. These rangers are awesome. And this tour, despite the fact that we said it can be rough with little kids, is totally worth it.
It is. It is. I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing it. I just want you to know there are better ones if you're looking for a little bit more up close and personal experience with the actual dwellings.
Right.
Which really brings us to the next one. But I do just, before we move on from Cliff Palace, I do want to mention, so you have to get tickets in advance.
Mm-hmm.
These tickets, as of recording, and they've changed it several times over the past couple of years, but right now it's 2 weeks in advance. And listen, this is like trying to get Going to the Sun Road reservations in Glacier, okay? These tickets, they're gone in 2 seconds. I mean, they go really fast, especially for the main summer season. And especially for the ones that are not Cliff Palace. Because like I said, Cliff Palace can take a lot of people because they're not letting you really wander.
Right.
The other ones take much smaller groups. And so if you're wanting to get in on one of those, especially, you'll need to be there right when they open up tickets on recreation.gov.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is how long we've been going to Mesa Verde. Because you used to not be able to get these tickets online. Do you remember this?
I remember this.
I had to get
hated this process.
I know. I had to get up so early when we would stay in Cortez only for this reason. Because if you stayed at the Farview Lodge in the park, you were not close to anywhere where you had to go buy tickets in person. You had to drive down to like the research center, which is not that close. So we would stay in Cortez and I would have to get up super early and go get in line at the Welcome Center and just wait in line.
Yeah.
And they would do it like all manually, basically. It was just like, you never know what you're going to get. You don't know what's available. And it was very stressful. So I'm actually really glad they moved everything to recreation.gov.
Yes.
Because doing it in person was the worst.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I remember they had it in Cortez and then I think they moved it to Durango.
They moved it. Well, so initially they had it in Cortez and Durango and then like the visitor centers in the park. And then they took it away from Cortez, but they left it in Durango. And I was like, why would you do that? Cortez is way closer. And so, so that was pretty stressful. And then they moved it to online, which I'm so grateful for.
So much better. So much better.
But you do have to be there right when they open if you're, especially again, if you're trying to take one of the smaller tours or if you just like really have your heart set on getting these tickets. And then if you don't get what you want, because they open them 2 weeks in advance, if you don't get what you want, you just have to keep watching for cancellations.
Right.
So that's, sometimes people cancel and you can scoop something up, but really, please be on there 2 weeks in advance if you really want to do this. Because
people, since they only open them up 2 weeks in advance, those are people that usually have pretty solid travel plans.
Yeah, they already know they're going.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of them are large family groups too. And so a lot of tickets get eaten up all at once.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a problem getting all the ones I wanted this last summer. I was there right when they opened up, though, and they did go super fast.
Yes.
Okay, so public service announcement done. But I would be doing you a disservice to say that, you can just play it by ear. No, you decide in advance which tickets you need, and you're there right when they open.
Yeah, that's so important.
Okay, so leaving Cliff Palace, you keep driving along this loop, and you get to the other side of the loop, and you get to my favorite.
3, 2, 1, balcony house. Oh, I thought we were going to say it together.
No. I already, did my trumpet intro.
I thought that's what the da-da-da-da was.
Nope. That was my trumpet intro to Balcony House, which is my personal favorite tour that you can do in Mesa Verde.
It's so cool. I absolutely love Balcony House because you can actually have that up and over, around and in type of experience.
So what I love about it is, first of all, the groups are smaller than at Cliff Palace. And second of all, there are some really terrifying ladders that you get to climb in and out of this. You climb a couple at the beginning, and then you climb a couple more at the end. And for me, that just I'm like, man, it's crazy that they lived here and had to climb down these cliffs every time they wanted to do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It really puts it into perspective, like how steep these cliffs are and how much of, I don't know, an adventure it would be every time you wanted to get in and out. And you're just up there. And this last time we went, I did Balcony House with just the kids. John didn't go. Can't even remember. Why didn't you go?
Because I just had back surgery.
That's right. Oh, he couldn't climb and he couldn't crawl, which is required for this. So I took our 2 sons with us, and they're pretty young. The youngest was 6, I guess 5 at the time.
Right.
And I was kind of nervous about taking them, but they're really good little hikers. But I really was still just I don't know about those ladders with them. But they did great. But it also put into perspective, I cannot imagine being a mom with a baby or something living in these cliff dwellings.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You would have a heart attack and you'd have to keep your kid on a leash. I wonder if they had leashes.
Sure. I think so.
That's what I would have done, because it's you can't turn your head for 2 seconds without your toddler just toddling off the cliff. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sure there was a pretty good supply and demand for yucca rope leash child leashes.
Exactly. I bet there was.
People you transplant one of these ancestral Puebloan people into a modern day Disneyland, and so people won't have their kids on leashes. They'd be oh, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
We do that at home.
It makes more sense if you live on a cliff.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you have these really cool ladders that you get to climb. And then Balcony House itself, the cliff dwelling, is not that big. But what's cool about the tour is you are walking between the rooms, and there's a couple tunnels between the rooms that you have to crawl through. You're just you're standing right in there, and you're going in and out and in between the different rooms. And it really does make for a more immersive tour. Yeah,
it's so cool. And you notice your waistline a lot more on this tour than you do in other ones.
Yeah. Suck it in. Our ranger on this last one, again, she's a lady that had been there forever. She's been working in Mesa Verde forever, but she plays the little flute, the Native American flute. So I have video of her playing a really beautiful song while we were up at Balcony House. It was cool.
That is cool. I like that.
So Balcony House is also where I remember a tour I took when I was younger. They talked about how there was a messaging system almost on Lord of the Rings when they light all the towers. What?
That was great. That? Yeah. Ash just organically referenced Lord of the Rings. Oh my gosh. The beacons are lit. And Rohan shall answer.
Yes, I love that part. So that's where I learned that they actually had something like that in place.
Yeah.
From Mesa Verde, and it connected to Chaco Canyon, which was the main hub in New Mexico for the ancestral Puebloan people. And I remember when they told me that, and they were they said Chaco Canyon and how it's bigger than Mesa Verde, and, it was the hub. And I was just I've never heard of that place.
Yeah.
What is that? And then we looked it up and we're holy smokes, we got to get to that place.
I know. It was awesome.
And we've been there several times now because it is phenomenal. So if you love Mesa Verde, look into Chaco Canyon as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible. But that's where I learned that as well, was from the balcony house tour.
Yeah, it's so cool that they had this entire network to communicate with each other over long distances. And it's awesome. So I'm really glad that we at least mentioned Chaco Canyon, because the cliff dwellings here at Mesa Verde are so cool, but it was just one section of a large community of ancestral Puebloans.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool that, and by visiting both and a lot of the things in the area, you get a lot, you can really see from a bird's eye perspective, the whole civilization.
Yeah, I mean, it really is crazy how many Native American sites are in this area. So if that's like your cup of tea and you're so excited by this stuff, you could spend forever down in this part of Colorado and down into New Mexico and over into Arizona. Like this whole circle really of stuff has just, I don't know, sites all over the place.
Yeah. There's so much.
I know. We actually last spring, we did a Southwest tour to all of our favorite parks down in the Southwest. And we stopped at Chaco Canyon. We were going to stop at Mesa Verde, but they got a ton of snow. So we just decided not to. But like we drove past Shiprock, which was really cool. And we went into Bears Ears and saw the house on fire, which is a really cool sight. And anyway, I could spend my whole life just living in that little section and exploring.
It's so cool. There's so much here. My buddy and I, Cameron, when we were growing up, we had one would you rather question that we could never answer with full confidence. And the question was, would you rather be a Native American warrior or would you rather be a ninja? And and honestly, it kind of depended on what movie we had seen last, whether it was a Western or like Dances with Wolves or whether it was a Jackie Chan movie. But especially after you visit some of these sites, like you always want to be a Native American warrior.
Oh, man. I know. If I was a Native American, I would have wanted to live in the cliff dwellings too, because those are the nicest houses, I think.
Yes.
Maybe not, but they look really pretty. So that finishes off like that main road that takes you to the main tours. And we forgot to mention on the Mesa Top Loop, I did talk about Square Tower House, how you can see it. That one does have a tour as well. That's not a tour we've ever taken, actually, because it's been closed every time. And then this last time we went last summer, it was open. And I was going to get tickets, but then I had to choose between Balcony House or Square Tower House. And I chose Balcony House because I wanted my kids to do that. And so that's still on my list. I don't know what that tour is like. I know that the groups are much smaller, like 10 people on that tour. So I would imagine you'd just get some really cool one-on-one time, basically with a ranger telling you about all that stuff. But those are the three main ranger-led tours in this section of the park. So it's Square Tower House, Cliff Palace, and Balcony House. You need tickets for all of those. And then the other main cliff dwelling that we mentioned, the Spruce Tree House, that's the one that you can't walk around right now because of the rocks. So as you can see, there's like so many cool things right here, but you need ranger-led tickets for pretty much all the really cool stuff. So I just want to reiterate that. You need tickets. Don't delay in getting those tickets. Okay, so now we head back to the Farview area, which is kind of where the road branches off, and that's where the lodge is. That's where we saw the feral horses last time.
It's so great to see horses here.
I know, but guess what? They're catching them all.
It's because they're actually considered like nuisance animals.
I know. But they're so pretty. It's like, what's more romantic than wild horses in Mesa Verde?
I know. It's so cool.
But yeah, they are. They're capturing them all and they're taking them away from Mesa Verde. So I don't even know if you'll even see any while you're there.
Yeah, it's true.
We got lucky. I love
We did get lucky. We're driving past. It's like sunset. You know, we see like the beautiful lodge up in the distance and then wild horses.
I know. And our view from our room at the lodge, it was really nice this last time. We got a better room. Like they like upgraded us.
Yes.
I was like, great. So that was really nice. And then they have a restaurant there.
The Metate House, I think is what it's called.
It's okay. It's fine.
I really like their short ribs.
Yeah.
The short rib grilled cheese.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh, yeah. That was good. The cafe or the terrace right down from the lodge, it's a separate building. They have Navajo tacos there. And they still call them Navajo tacos.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Which I know. I even double checked because everywhere. So we've called them Navajo tacos forever.
Growing
here in
up,
the
that's
Southwest.
what we always called them.
Yeah.
The flatbread with the beans and
it's like the chili with the cheese. And
the
they're
salsa.
really good.
Yeah, it is really good.
But yeah, everywhere has been changing them from Navajo because that's not politically correct, I guess, to like Indian taco
Just
or fried
regular
bread taco or whatever, whatever
exactly.
But at Mesa Verde, they still call them Navajo tacos.
Right.
So there you go.
So you get the OG.
Yeah.
You get the original Navajo taco in like the place that you would want it.
Yeah.
Which is right here, which is so cool.
So that's kind of fun.
And it was actually good. We've had Navajo tacos in other national park restaurants and they are garbage. But this one was good.
Yeah. We do tend to always order a Navajo taco if it's available because they're really good most of the time. We make homemade ones that are really good.
Yes.
It's hard to beat our homemade ones, but Mesa Verde, you can get a Navajo taco if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, that's where the road branches off to take you on the Wetherill Mesa Road, which is the quiet part of Mesa Verde.
Very quiet. Almost nobody goes here.
This road is more seasonal. Like I mentioned before, you can't have a vehicle longer than 25 feet on this road. It's pretty windy. Takes forever to get to the end of it.
Right.
Also, as of this recording, they're doing construction out here. And so actually the whole road is closed. But that should be done not this year, but I think they're aiming for next year. So that's something to keep in mind. But we do want to touch on it in this episode just because if you're listening to this in the future, it might be open for you and you might be wondering what's down there.
And what is at the end of the road is actually super cool.
It's John's favorite, I think, right?
I think I kind of got a little bit of flack.
You did. It was a terrible decision.
During our favorite National Park Trails podcast episode, I put the hike to Longhouse was one of my favorites. And I stand by that, despite the fact that we haven't even mentioned it so far this episode. The hike to Longhouse and walking around and touring Longhouse is incredible. It is absolutely incredible.
It really, really is. I can't argue with you about that. It's just that the hike itself is not like that exciting compared to like the Skyline Trail in Mount Rainier.
I know.
They're not even on the same playing field.
Well, but that's exactly right. Apples and oranges.
It is.
They're totally different. Well, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, the Mesa Verde is in its own category, basically, within the National Parks Service system. And so it's precious. So Longhouse is nearly as big as Cliff Palace. It's got almost 150 rooms. So it's not quite as big as Cliff Palace, but it's awesome because you get to explore. So you basically go from the top of the mesa and you're like wandering through the wilderness, basically.
The canyon right there.
Yeah, you're wandering through the wilderness until eventually you find your way down the canyon and then boom, it just opens up and you see this giant cliff dwelling and the tour sizes are so much smaller than at Cliff Palace. And so you get there and it's just like, wow, you feel like you have it just to like yourself and your own group, basically.
Well, you do. I mean, that's the problem with Cliff Palace is like they're doing like tour after tour after tour. To get to Longhouse, it's a much longer hike. You're actually hiking to get to Longhouse. It's a much longer tour.
Right.
I think it's like 3 hours versus Cliff Palace is like 45 minutes. And we did take our kids on this one, our young kids, and they did fine actually because I think for me, Longhouse is how I wish Cliff Palace was tour-wise. Because you are able to walk, you're going up and down ladders and you're walking close to the rooms or in between the rooms and you're right up in there. And so it's kind of what I envisioned Cliff Palace tour to be like, but it's at Longhouse.
But I guess I understand what the Park Service is doing with trying to move that many people in and out of Cliff Palace and to preserve it so that it doesn't get degraded and destroyed over time. There's no way you could do it like that. But with these smaller groups like at Longhouse, it's totally possible. And it's awesome. And it's so much fun. And I absolutely love this tour. And like you said, it's like 3 hours. And so you can suck so much information out of these park rangers.
Yeah. They are stuck with you for a long time.
It's amazing. It was one of the best cultural experiences I think I'd had, was with those rangers over a long time, really immersing you into the ancestral Puebloan culture.
And they're not like rushing you through as much. You have a lot more time to ask those questions and to really soak in what you're looking at and get a better picture of the whole story of the area and the people. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I still prefer Balcony House over Longhouse just because I think it's not as long of a tour.
Right.
But I love the Longhouse tour.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so great.
You just have to plan a little bit more time for that.
Definitely.
So keep that in mind. But yeah, Longhouse is awesome. So when that one reopens and they start doing tours there again, I absolutely would not hesitate to book tickets to see that one. The other thing that's right there is the Step House, which is just a short little self-guided loop with some recreations of some like the pit house that we talked about and stuff like that. So you can do that while you're right there. Otherwise, there's really not much to do along that road. No. You really are just driving and driving and driving and driving till you get to the very bottom when you get to Longhouse.
Yes.
So I personally, I don't know that I would really take the time to drive the whole road unless you have tickets for Longhouse.
Right.
Because it will take a huge chunk of time out of your day to get down here.
And most of the stuff that you'd be able to see, like at the exhibit that they have there, is stuff that you can see at like the far view sites and things like that too. And
right,
so
and the Mesa Top Loop. Yeah. It's not as interactive as it is at Step House. But again, you're going to spend 2 to 3 hours in your car just trying to get down there and back.
Right.
So you might as well only do that really if you either have a bunch of time in Mesa Verde and it doesn't matter if you drive that far, or if you have tickets to go see Longhouse.
Right.
So that covers the whole park.
Yeah, we did the whole road, all the roads. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not a huge park, but there is a lot to do. I mentioned at the beginning, I do want to go back and talk about these gateway towns, but not really Cortez. We can skip that one. So a lot of people stay in Durango while they're in the Mesa Verde area. It's like an hour, hour and a half. You're like an hour to the park entrance, and then you've got to drive again to get to anything of note. But we really like, especially if we're going through the Colorado parks and we're wanting to hit a few, a lot of times if we do come down to Mesa Verde, then we'll go over to Durango and then up the $1 Million Highway to get to Black Canyon of the Gunnison, which is on the other side of the $1 Million Highway. So I do just want to mention that because that's a super cool road trip that you can do. Is you can go to Mesa Verde and then you can go into Durango. You can ride the train. Durango is like a huge fishing mecca. There's a lot of fishing that you can do. It's an old mining town. So there's you've got the Diamond Bell Saloon with
I was going to say that
piano player, Adam. I still remember his first name. He was so good.
That place was so cool. And his plays, it's so much fun. It's just like you're stepping back in time. It's so fun. Yeah,
so that's a saloon that had live saloon piano music that we really like to stop at. And then if you drive the $1 Million Highway, which I think is one of Colorado's very best roads, you can drive the $1 Million Highway and it takes you up into the mountains. It takes you to Silverton, which is a really cool old mining town it's so high up in there.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool downtown that's just been restored. I don't know, you can see the mining roots all over.
Yes.
It's just very much a mining town. We got funnel cakes there.
And
which were really good.
That was delicious. Oh my gosh. They were so good.
But if you ride the train,
one of each, please.
Yeah. If you ride the train up there, then it stops in Silverton. So that's a really fun little excursion. But we always just drive it because it takes you right up to the Black Canyon of the Gunnison area.
Right.
You go through Ouray, which is a really cool town. You go through Ridgeway, which has like its John Wayne roots. And
it does.
Yeah, and then you get up to Montrose and the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. So I just wanted to mention that because that's a really cool little side thing you can do if you want to connect those two. Durango, in and of itself, like if you're, as we mentioned, we don't like to stay there to actually visit Mesa Verde because it's just a little too far.
But as like part of a larger road trip, it's awesome.
Yeah. So we stay, when we go down there, we'll stay like a night or two in Mesa Verde, and then we'll go over to Durango for another night or whatever, and then we'll drive up the $1 Million Highway.
Right.
So just wanted to mention that because that honestly is one of my favorite things to do in the Mesa Verde area if we're right there. Or you could go to Chaco Canyon.
Yes.
Which is the other direction.
And not near anything.
Right. As is usually the case for most of these places.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And so you've got a couple of really good options, but overall, just a really worthwhile national park to visit. Give yourself a couple days if you can, if you're really wanting to dig into those ranger tours. Expect a lot more driving than you probably think. Make sure you're watching your tour times versus your drive times. Make sure you're getting your reservations in advance. And just, we hope that you have a great time in Mesa Verde.
So for your task today, we're going to put up a picture of one of the ladders that you have to climb when you take the tour of Balcony House.
Yes. It's so epic. It's so epic. I'm going to put that picture on the Dirt in My Shoes socials, Instagram and Facebook. So go check it out. And we want to know, would you climb this ladder?
Yes.
Does it look like something that would be fun to you? And we also want to just give you a glimpse into my favorite tour in the park, which is Balcony House.
It does seem to be a make or break for some people.
It is. Yeah. Some people are just like, heck no.
Exactly.
So go take a look. We want to thank you for being here today, exploring Mesa Verde with us. Please leave us a 5-star review if you're enjoying the podcast. We love reading through those, and we really appreciate you.
Yes, thanks to all those who have given us reviews in the past. You're the best, and go get some dirt in your shoes.